Hello everyone, welcome to Painting Crafty, and today I'm going to be painting and crafting and showing you how you can create a fun letter doodling idea that you can put on a card or some DIY ideas for your home for this St. Patrick's Day. Perhaps you're a wee bit Irish like me and you might want to have a little bit of fun in your home. Well, today I'm a part of a YouTube collaboration. It's called Shamrocking DIYs for your home. We have three hosts today. We have Mary with the Painted Peach, Jeanie with Jeanie's Painted Palette, and Kristi with Funky Junk Inspiration. Now you're going to find the links to their channels down inside of the description box, as well as a playlist for all those who are joining in today's collaboration and creating some fun DIY shamrock ideas. Well, let's get started. I can't wait to share with you this fun idea of how to create some doodle lettering and making them look a wee bit Irish. Because this project was going to be a lettering project, I did draw some marks on my paper to help keep my lines a little bit straight and to help me figure out the placing and the spacing for my lettering. I was going to be creating a little happy leprechaun for the letter H. I was writing Happy St. Patrick's Day, so I was going to be making the H in a shape of a leprechaun. I started with those U shapes down below to create his beard and then made his hat band at an angle, like it was crossing over an H, and the top of the H was going to be his hat. I put a little buckle on there because every little leprechaun needs a buckle on his hat. I used a metallic gold marker to create the gold buckle on his hat. I was going to be creating just a simple little face, two little oval eyes, a round little nose, and just a sweet little smile for this leprechaun face. For the majority of the lettering, I was going to be creating these block styles, and each of the letters would have different patterns and colors on the inside. Pinterest is a great place to look to get ideas of how to create these different doodle patterns for lettering. There's lots of different ideas, and it's kind of like creating fabric patterns inside of your letters. I often say stylized writing like this is very much a drawing skill. The more you practice, the better you get. So it's about mixing patterns and styles of lettering. There isn't any really wrong or right way to do this. It's all about playing and experimenting with different shapes inside of your letters and different shapes for letters. Sometimes when I do this lettering, I do start in the middle of my word, so then I make sure I have enough room on each side of my word to be able to create it on that one line I need to. This one, I just eyeballed it and it worked out fine. I did want to mention I do have a sketchbook membership. If you're interested in getting the line drawings for any of my paintings and sketches that I do on YouTube, you can find them there at my Ko-fi page. I'll have the link down inside of my description box. It's easy to join, very reasonably priced, and I'd love to have more creative friends join me there. I so appreciate my members supporting my channel this way. The very bottom line, I was just going to be putting the one word day, so I needed to take up space on each side, so I was going to be putting a pot of gold with a rainbow, and then on the other side I was going to be creating a few little shamrocks to fill in that space. I was going to be coloring this in using some watercolor markers over the top. I was going to be using the Crayola ones, so I wanted to do my pen work first in this instance. So I was going to be using my micron pens in different nib sizes. I think the smallest was a 01 and then a 03 and a 05. Now micron pens are permanent once they're dry, so this worked great because I could go over top of my markers with watercolor and I didn't have to worry about them smearing at all. This is where I'm going to be adding a few more doodle marks onto my patterns with my micron pens. Once I have the doodle patterns on, I'm going to need to erase my pencil marks because once the watercolor goes on top of the pencil, it locks it underneath there. So you definitely want to go ahead and erase all your pencil marks before you were to put your watercolor on top. Creating this whimsical style of doodle lettering is a great way to design a card, or a fun way to create a DIY home decor item. I'm going to be putting mine inside of a frame and setting it on my shelf for St. Patrick's Day, especially now since I know I'm a wee bit Irish myself. I just found that out a couple years ago. I always knew I was a little bit of German, a little bit of Norwegian, but I'm also a wee bit Irish. And how fun is that? I just added a little bit more decorative items in the back, gave in my piece a good erase to make sure all my pencil lines were gone, and now I'm going to be adding the watercolor on top. I was going to be using the Crayola markers to create the watercolor look for this piece. There's two different ways I do this. I was using watercolor paper, so I could do it in two different ways. One way is I do a patch of color on a plastic bag, add some water to make a puddle, and then pick it up and create a watercolor look that way. Or, as I'm doing here, I outlined my area where I wanted the color in them with using the marker directly on my paper, add some water and float the color into the inside of the image. Either way works. As long as you're using watercolor paper, it will work. If you've drawn on something that isn't watercolor paper, you'll want to use that first way of putting the color on the plastic bag and then picking it up and using it like a watercolor. Using the Crayola markers is a great way to start with watercolor. If you've never tried it before, it's an inexpensive way to try. I do recommend using the Canson watercolor paper. That's what I started with. It's a nice quality watercolor paper, and you do get some really good looks, even using these simple little markers. As far as brushes, you do not need a watercolor brush to create watercolor, although it is nice to have a nice sharp round pointed brush for doing these small little paintings. It helps really getting into those little areas to have that small little point. The markers work the same way as a regular watercolor would work. It wants to float wherever the paper is wet. So you do want to give yourself some dry time in between those areas that are different colors. So I definitely wanted to make sure my green was dry and my red was dry, or my orange was dry from my beard before I did that sweet little face. If I went in too early, my color would float down into that little face, and then I'd end up with a green leprechaun. Maybe perhaps leprechauns are green, I'm not for sure. But I didn't want that to happen on mine, so I definitely wanted to give my green hat and my orange beard some time to dry before I did the face. When I was choosing out the colors for this, I decided to choose a variety of shade of greens, add some purple, and then a little bit of orange. And those colors really do pop when you add those together. This watercolor application works the same way as other ones. As long as you're layering on another layer of the same color, it's going to go darker. So you can just simply add another layer of the same color you put on, and that will darken it. Watercolor does dry slightly lighter, so what you see when the colors are wet, it's going to be a little lighter when it dries. Another tip, which often I don't follow, is it is a good idea to start at the top of your paper and then work your way down so your hand doesn't drag through the wet colors. But just because I say that doesn't mean I always follow that rule, but it is helpful if you do remember to do it that way. I wanted to say a special thank you to our hosts today, Mary, Jeanie, and Kristi, for hosting today's collaboration. Definitely take some time and check out their channels inside of the description box, as well as click that playlist so you can see all the other videos that people have contributed today in today's fun Shamrock collaboration. I'm just about finished with this. I added some gold to add the sparkle to the gold on the pot and the gold to his hat, and now I need to add the edging to my card. I'm taking a marker and running it around the edge, halfway on and halfway off, all the way around the edge. Once I have the marker on, I'm going to take a wet brush and then pick up some of the color on the edge and bring it towards the middle. It's a simple way to add a darker green border around the edge and add a little bit of color in between. To add just a little bit more color to my background, I took the greens that I had used on my lettering, made little patches of the color on my plastic, and then picked them up randomly and applied them to my background in an irregular way. This creates a nice whimsical, playful background. The last step I wanted to do was to add some bright white line work to my piece. Using a Uniball gel pen is the perfect tool to do this. The ink inside of this gel pen is fairly opaque and makes for great white lines. Because it's a gel pen, it has a roller ink ball on the end and makes for very smooth line work. It's a great art tool to have in your stash, and I highly recommend having one. Well, let's take a look at what this piece looks like mounted on a card and mounted inside of a frame. It's going to look great on my shelf, and I can't wait to display it this St. Patrick's Day. If you're new to my channel and you like doing art and crafts, come on over and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Once you subscribe to my channel, make sure you click that bell so you get notifications of any new videos I might put up. If you enjoyed this video, here's a couple more you might want to check out. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today, and hopefully you'll come back and see me again, and next time you'll create right along with me.